Hello, everyone. We are live today on Friday, June 5th, 2026. This is episode number 173. You can find related links for today's episode at augforums.com/episode 173. And Tejas, every time I see your name, I want to pronounce it Tejas because that's how you say Texas in Spanish, but it's Tejas. And I don't even know how to say your last name, so you're gonna have to help me with that. Help me out.
Sure, and you can say it. You can say it any way you need to. I've heard it.
No, you tell me. You tell me. Give me the right way to say it.
So Tejas Nerurkar is my
Nerurkar.
Yes,
Okay.
3 R's.
Right.
3 R's. We're gonna test
and,
you in a minute.
There's three. Oh, I'm gonna ask an AI question about that a little bit later. But so let me get that queued up. So we're gonna talk about ERP process documentation and AI impact. You've been in this space for decades, I'm pretty sure. And I think it's become more relevant in the age of AI. So we're going to talk about that. But first, I'll just jump right in on your last name and ask AI wise. So one of the things AI cannot do yet, depending on how you phrase it, but it can't tell you how many R's there are in strawberry because there's 3 R's in your last name. Have you ever asked it how many R's are in your last name?
I just did, and could you tell me?
Did it get it?
I haven't asked yet.
Oh, you haven't? Okay. All right. We'll find out. I'll try it. And so actually you emailed me this morning, but I didn't see it in time about maybe even pushing this out 30 days because of some new AI stuff you're working on. But we decided to still go ahead and do the conversation. And, I don't like using this podcast as a sales platform. I just like using this as a way to learn about stuff that's going on. And you're, in my opinion, very knowledgeable in the process documentation space. So let's just talk about that today. And then I think towards the end, you can sort of give us a little glimpse into what you're working on with your product. And maybe we could do another one in a month and a half or so about your specific product.
Love to do that.
Does that sound good?
That sounds great, Tim.
So maybe we can just start off with like your brief origin story. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? And how did you get into this process documentation world that you do?
So I kind of stumbled into it. So I went to university in Philadelphia. So I went to the University of Pennsylvania and never really thought I'd get into software or ERP. I was always kind of into computers, but didn't really study it. And after I graduated, I just was really drawn to that. So I started the company right out of school. Started helping some of our initial clients with IT and business process consulting. And really, I was kind of a technician. I was helping them implement new softwares, troubleshoot. And as we were doing that, we grew and we had the product idea, which was the BPR, which is all about SOPs and process documentation. I come from a family of doctors, parents, wife, sister, they're all physicians. So we didn't grow up in manufacturing or ERP or software. So that's why I never thought I'd kind of wind up in this space. So it just kind of, it was very serendipitous how it all happened. But as I started to really get into IT and get into ERP and get into software and really manufacturing too, I just loved everything about it. I loved how organized you had to be as a manufacturer. I loved how to create documentation or to be a good technician, you really had to hand off great documentation for end users. So I loved the precision with which you had to operate in the space. And I loved computers. I was always gaming as a kid. I loved technology. So that's kind of how I ended up in this space.
And the website of your product is thebpr.com if people want to check that out. And again, I think we'll zoom in on what you're working on roadmap wise later. But tell me about your journey. You got into. I didn't remember that you got into it right out of college.
Right out of college. Yep.
You've been into it for what, a couple decades now at this point?
Couple decades.
Yeah.
I was bald back then, and I'm luckily still bald.
Yeah, so this doesn't necessarily indicate age, but it's a pretty good correlation, right?
Yes.
So when you got into it, talk to me about just the journey in terms of it. I feel like there's a big turning point with AI, and that's the main reason why I wanted to do this podcast. But before we get to that part, talk to me about why companies document processes and what got you interested in that. Because I think for a lot of people, I'll speak for myself. I'm one of these people. Like process documentation, I know it's one of those things that I should do, but it's the last thing on my list, and I don't do a great job at it. And I think that's a common thing for a lot of people. Like it's something that they know they have to do, but it's, it's like filing, or, it's some task that's low on your priority list because you don't want to do it. That's my take. So what got you interested in it, and what did you do, especially for companies earlier on before we had this whole AI thing coming recently?
Well, I mean, I did it, right? So after I graduated as that consultant, I was doing it. I was the technician building that documentation. And before I could get to any of the strategic work with the clients that I had, we had to do that documentation. We had to build it all out. So I felt the pain of doing it. One of our first clients, who is still with us today, we were doing a project with them, and I had to involve also their whole team in getting all the documentation done, because I didn't know I was not the subject matter expert. I was there to help them basically. But before we were going to improve any of their processes or any of their softwares or systems, we had to get everything kind of on paper. And the way we did it was with screenshots and videos and manually. So that was the idea of the BPR, that I want to do the strategic work for these clients. I want to help. How do we automate this process? And that was the birth of the product. So I had been doing it kind of as a consultant, and there was a better way, I thought, and we built the product and slowly started to get traction. We've had to evolve it a lot over the years. When you're in this business for 25 years, you see so many different phases where technology trends change, where team trends change, and I'm very grateful to have been able to see how all those phases work, because it's the same thing today with AI. The whole process documentation world is also going to change, but it's a little bit of how we started.
I love it when people come in to the software, or they come in through the door of actual real world doing stuff before getting into software. Because I think so much software is produced like in this clean room by, some geeky developer type, and they really don't know for sure if the thing they built has real world applications. So I always love it when people come in the door of, hey, I actually experienced a pain in the real world, and now I'm going to use software to solve it instead of the other way around. So I love hearing that. And I'm curious, sure, when you just first started doing it, were you reaching for Microsoft Word? Is that the tool of choice that most people document?
For sure.
Or is that what it was?
Sure. Absolutely. We were reaching for Microsoft Word. We were, doing it the manual way, and that's exactly how we started. And it's still, Microsoft is still amazing, and they still do great things, and they've opened up their ecosystem to allow other people to build better technologies on top of it. But it started with Word, absolutely.
And you mentioned then you kind of had to do this to get to the strategic part. What is the strategic part then? So that I'm glad to hear that. So it sounds like even for you, you didn't get into process documentation just because you love process documentation. There was a carrot. There was something that was drawing you to do it. What was that strategic thing that you could do once you built documentation for a company?
To help the team that I was working with, to make things simpler. I think that's something that really drives me, was just to keep the client happy and leave them in a better state. So the strategies that we were going to come up with, we couldn't do them unless they could get their daily work done.
So I'm going to push you more on that. Before I do, though, Caden's got a comment that I guess there's a Cloudin plugin for Word that's been great for documentation building. Interesting. And Caden's actually going to come on the podcast next week to talk about something else that he's been working on. But push you more on the strategic part. So is the strategic part, is it improving the processes? Like, is it basically you capture things as is, so you now can step back and look at it and decide how to make things flow better through an organization? Is that part of it, or is that all of it?
For sure. Well, I wouldn't say it's all of it. I think that is definitely the first step. So you get the to-be processes, the present state, and then you're working towards a future state. So that's absolutely one of them. I think the other component is to find out what the teammates actually like. What do they enjoy doing of that process documentation? So it was both. It was to get to a better, more efficient state through better ways of doing things, but also understanding what people do. So if you need to move them in their seat, you could do that as well.
Ooh, I love that. Okay, I'm gonna table that, but I want to get back to that. Let's start with the efficient part. As soon as you say efficiency, you get the whole Lean Six Sigma Ninja crowd super excited. They love making things more efficient. Time studies, like, oh, this, we shouldn't do this, then this. We should cut out the middle part. Efficiency, efficiency, efficiency. That makes sense. Talk to me though about how efficiency impacts the bottom line. Like I'm not a big fan of efficiency for the sake of efficiency. Like something used to take 3 seconds, now it takes 10 seconds. I don't really care unless I'm experiencing the pain. I think Microsoft as a business has proven this. Like Microsoft software, in my opinion, is never the best. It's always like good enough. And they just made a whole business on just throwing more resources at inefficient code to be good enough in things. And so for all of those reasons, efficiency doesn't drive me personally. But talk to me about like making the process more efficient, or maybe we just say better. Talk to me about how that impacts the bottom line and how, like a business owner, why they should care about improving processes.
Well, I think as a business owner, you're always trying to do things for your team, right? So you're always trying to make the team, you can use the word more efficient or more productive or happier, or more, or leaning in more. You can use I think all those different terms lead to better output. I think with our approach, it was being efficient also in the process documentation itself. So with our tool, the subject matter expert could go in, they can create the documentation, but then the vision was that they could also update it. They can also make it better. They can also improve it. So you don't have to do this exercise manually every few years, give it to a consultant like me at that time, come up with better ideas, and then put them in place and just do it for the owner. You're doing it for the team. So if it's driven by the subject matter experts, that I think is the best way to drive efficiency. So to kind of simply answer the question, what is the efficiency with us? It's giving the end user the tool to document what they do, but improve it themselves. And that's going to motivate them as well to participate and create great outcomes for the business.
So I think that does bleed into the psychological part of it, which gets me excited. I love when you talk about this, just making people happier. I've seen this in the ERP space with Acumatica. Like when you come in with a newer system and you replace an older system, the younger crowd in the business gets happier, because they don't feel like they're building skills on something that doesn't matter. They're building skills for their own career on something that has a brighter future. And that does matter for attracting talent.
For sure.
And so I think I love that. Talk to me about that part of what you've seen when you come in and you help a team document processes. Like I also love, well, I'll just give you that. Yeah. Just talk to me about the general level. Like how do you impact people's happiness with what you do?
So I think some of the greatest thinkers in the world have said the highest level of intelligence, or the highest, the holy grail, is simplicity, keeping things simple. And I think
I've got it right on my wall. I've got a Richard Branson quote: "Complexity is your enemy. Any fool can make something complicated. It is hard to keep things simple." With you there. Yeah,
for sure. And I think that, how you actually make that happen, you have to stick to certain principles, and putting the team at the center, I think is of course one of the principles, and keeping them, like, how do you actually achieve happiness? You think of the team, and you think what's going to move them, right? What's going to move them, and to get something to inspire a teammate isn't always it can just be a picture. So what we decided when we started building our tool was, what are the tenets of simplicity? What do we want to make how do we make this as simple as possible? And pictures and visual documentation was really the driver. And I think inspiring the team with a really simple application that gets them to want to use it is the way to do that. And you do that through pictures. You do that by not flooding the application or really make it overloaded with features. I think there's a mistake that people make today. You can do anything you want with AI, but just because you can do everything doesn't mean you should deliver everything. You have to be very mindful of the end user and what's going to be most impactful. I mean, if you look at Apple devices or you look at Android devices, Android typically is the one that gets all the features fast and quickest. Yet you see people, really love their Apple devices and stay in the Apple ecosystem just because they deliver things in such a simple way. So I think giving end users and giving the team things that are really simple, it inspires them to keep doing what they need to do. People pay attention when things are simple.
I hadn't thought about, so that makes sense then why you lit up a little bit. Before going live, I always like to give people a brief tour of this StreamYard.com software that I use for doing these live broadcasts, and you lit up a little bit, and that makes sense because you think very similarly. I love the StreamYard.com application, and a lot of it comes down to simplicity.
It's very cool.
It's what they don't do that I like almost more than what they do, because they say exactly no to right. Yeah, that's
and I think that's the art right now. It's always been the art, but the art is going to be really finding the signal from the noise, and that's something that I love. I love the intersection of how to really think of the creative nature of what we're doing, not just the technical nature. Because I'm a technician by, let's say, trade, but somewhere in my heart, I'm very creative, but I can't draw. I can't even draw a stick figure. I just have the ideas.
And I think that comes then from your background of like having the experience in the real world before you even got
For sure.
So I'm going to pull you out of the BPR a little more. Talk to me about like how you impact people's happiness just with process documentation in general. Because again, I go back to, it just seems like such a dull and boring task. How do you, if you forget about even the software of making it easier, how do you get people to care about documenting process? Because I think a lot of people, when you come to them and you're like, hey, I need you to document your process, what they hear is, hey, I need you to tell me what you do so I can replace you. And how do you get it? So how do you, well, I guess I'll start there. How do you go from fear to happiness with getting people to care about process documentation? Forget about the process of doing it, but how do you get people through that? Like, just why should they care to, be sort of part of the whole company process instead of being able to build their own little kingdom and no one knows what they do?
So I think if you approach it, hey, we want to document your processes, you're right. You put people into this defensive state of mind. But if you approach it from a improvement standpoint, like we want to improve what we're trying to do, and this is the first step, you inspire people to see they have agency in making things better. And I think that's super important. And while we, let's say, started with process documentation, even in those first projects, it was always about, for those teammates, making things better, right? The strategic thing. That was always the second step. So it's about making them feel included. In the old days, when a consultant would come in and he or she would document everything, and then he or she would be in the room with the owner and they'd come out and say, this is how we're doing things. That is also something that creates fear in the team.
Yes.
But if you
come in as the expert and they tell you how to do them. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So everything about when I was a consultant and a technician, to the current version of our product to the future version of our product, it's always going to have an angle of making it so the end users are part of making things better for themselves. And also that sense of belonging is something that's really important for all of our teams, right? Why do we love working with teams? Because you do something great together with someone else. So when you do these kinds of projects, you're actually making things better together. So it also inspires this sense of belonging for teams, right? Process documentation, SOPs, super boring. No one wants to talk about it. But if you look at it, like, why have I done it for 2 decades? Because I look at it through the lens of continuous improvement. I look at it through the lens of inspiration. I look at it through the lens of, creativity, because it also is very creative. If the team is going to get involved in making something better, maybe like me, someone also can't draw, but they're great at what they do. So they're also going to be able to think of a new way to make it better. So I think creativity, inspiration, agency, belonging to making things better, all these things matter in doing projects like this, because it's never about getting the present state documented and then you're good. It's always about trying to get somewhere else.
I love that. That really resonates.
And you, by the way, Tim, you've told me, and you blew me away with some of the things, like the notes you had taken with, I think, one of your professors, because you were so inspired by process documentation. So let me kind of turn it around on you. Why were you so inspired? I think there was a course you took, right? And you kept asking questions and you took those perfect notes on process documentation.
I forgot I shared that with you.
Yeah. What gets you excited about this boring topic?
Well, okay. First, I want to respond to something you said, and then I'll respond to that. I love that. Basically, instead of coming to someone and say, "Hey, I need you to document your processes," I love coming with a position of humility and just say, "You know what? I don't think we do things super great around here. I think we could do them better. Do you agree?" And most people are going to be like, "Yeah," they're going to rattle off all this stuff that we're doing wrong, right? And then when you sort of get people to be like, "Hey, let's make the world a better place together," I love that. Then it's like, "Hey, how do we do that?" Well, there's so many people in the organization, et cetera, et cetera. Then the vehicle to do that is we're going to need to document what we're doing in order to help us get there. So that makes total sense to me, and I absolutely love that. Then to respond to your question of, what got me into it, I got to find let's see if I can find the site real quick on the side. Yeah, I'll put it up on the screen. So I went searching for process documentation back when I was working for a manufacturing company in Cleveland, Ohio. And it was a similar thing. It was like, for me, it was, I can't keep all of this in my head. I want to make things better, not just individually, like everyone wants to make things better. We're frustrated by certain things that we're doing, but I can't keep it all in my head. And so I wanted a way to be able to put that on in some vehicle. And when I would try to do it, first I started with Word, and I would just try bullet points in Microsoft Word, but it just became too noisy, too fast. And I'm a big fan of a picture is worth 1,000 words. So then I gravitate towards PowerPoint. And the main thing I ran into with PowerPoint is I would do a box, draw an arrow to the next step in the process, to the next step. And the thing I ran into from a technical perspective is I ran out of real estate. I could make the thing, instead of portrait, I make it landscape. Then I go to like legal size instead of letter size, but I can only grow so wide, right? And the notes that I had sent you was from another product. I'm going to put it up on the screen. This worksimp.com. I'm always attracted to things that have like depth. And this was created by an actual grandfather, father, son team. Like it's 3 generations that they've been into this. And one of them even got a PhD at UCLA in organizational psychology, so They really got into the depth of how teams work. They did a lot of stuff in government documenting process, but their thinking was exactly what you've already described, which is you need to document the current state before you can improve it, because you need to know how things are actually working. And they're very blue collar thinking. They would talk about, you have to have the worker do the documentation, not the manager, because the manager doesn't know the actual stuff the worker does. And so that got me in it. But for that specific thing that I got into was their product would actually allow you to just keep going. There was no limit to how wide you could make it. And then what fascinated me, and I'd love to hear your thoughts product wise, how, if you're building anything towards this, but what I loved about their product, and the problem with theirs, it's like an old Windows-based application, so it's kind of dated. But you could basically just keep adding. adding as wide as you wanted to go. And you never ran into the PowerPoint problem of I go and then I go down and then I go across. And then the worst thing with PowerPoint is when I need to insert something later, because now it messes the whole thing up and I got to drag everything around. For them, you just hit insert and it just inserts. But then they think about the printing of it afterwards. So it was a vector-based thing that they did so it could scale in and out. So you could tell it to print on paper that was really tall or really narrow. So you'd print it out, you'd put it on a conference room wall, and you'd have people stand around it and talk about it. Right. That part really fascinated me because that really resonated. Let's bring this stuff out of the digital world that we use to create it and bring it back into the physical world where we can actually stand around. You do that? Why do you do that? Because over here we can see, and I love that vision. So that
sounds amazing. Yeah. That sounds amazing. And I think I was thinking exactly the same way. So, we built our product to be very modular, so you could put things in and out and you can extend it. What started with kind of screenshots and pictures for the computer extended to the shop floor. So people could have picture-based instructions and QR codes also on the shop floor. So very much what inspired you continues to inspire me about keep making it easy to update and keep it visual and, keep extending it. So you mentioned, how do you extend left to right? When I think about product, I think, again, putting the user at the center. They're working on all these different devices. So they're working on their desktop, they're working on their mobile phone, they're working on RFID. So a lot of our customers use RFID gun scanners to scan their inventory. So we put the app on the RFID gun so you can scan a QR code and get your SOP right there. So I think that same thing of how do you loved about WorkSimp, how it could just keep extending, and you could go endlessly. And I think the same way you do, right? For us, it's more step-by-step or modular. And we also extend to all these different platforms, and platforms are changing all the time. Now AI is here, right? So we have to think, how are we going to be extending it? We're, as you opened with at the beginning of the session today, we have some really exciting things coming in 30 days, because while AI is going to change a lot of things, and AI is going to change how process documentation works, how knowledge flows, keeping principles like simplicity and the team and improvement, these things are never going to change, right? The values of why we do these things are never going to change. So it's just the approach. How do you extend it out? How do you keep going for AI, right? So this process of continuing to make it better also will never stop. AI is just the next one.
Love it. Yeah. So we're about 30 minutes in. I think let's turn the AI corner here. And it could be that I don't know, that's what I love about doing this live and not doing any prep on this. I'm just like, hey, Tejas would be a good person to ask about this. So I haven't even asked you about this. I don't know how you're going to respond. You might be thinking just in terms of like integrating with AI, and, you talked about being another layer of tech. That's actually not what caused me to reach out to you. So we can get to all that stuff, but I'm curious just your thoughts on this part. First off, before we get to the AI part, let me ask you about this. Do you find that, we talked about making people happier. Hey, let's make the world a better place together. And in order to do that, we need to know how to work as a team. So we need to document what we're doing so we can improve things. Have you found though that another reason is to help with onboarding new employees? Like, is that a big reason that resonates?
Of course.
It is?
I mean, that's a huge reason.
So that's a reason. But like for most companies, you're not onboarding new employees every week, and a lot of times you sort of hit a spot where the company is somewhat happy, especially in family-owned businesses. If you're private equity driven, then you're always growing. But if it's a family-owned business, you sort of plateau. Maybe you got 50 people and you're like, hey, we make a living, we're happy. So, that might not drive a lot of people. But in the AI world, what got me interested again in this topic is people now are spinning up AI agents. And AI agents, the idea is if you're using ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, you're just interacting with the AI in real time. Hey, let me ask you something. I watch you respond. than I'm real time interacting. What people are now doing, like just in the last 6 months, is they're spinning up what people are calling AI agents, where they just let the AI go off and work on something on its own. And especially developers, they'll have it go work for hours or overnight, and then they'll look in the morning, what did it work on? And in that kind of world that we're moving to me, I think process documentation becomes way more important, because now you have two things. It's not that you're hiring someone all the time, but an AI agent, in my opinion, is kind of like a new employee every day. Because the AI agent doesn't remember stuff. So if people know how AI works, it's basically just a bunch of math. And when you take the AI and you go point it to work on something, it doesn't have any memory. Like it's like the movie Groundhog's Day. Like every morning it wakes up and it has, it's just the same. It's a fresh start every day.
Right.
And so you have to give it people are calling context, which is basically the memory. And the only way to do that is if you have it documented. And so if you want the AI to start working in your business as a worker, it needs to know about your business, which means it needs to be documented. That's what caused me to reach out to you. What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think it's super important to give guardrails to the agent. It's critical that you're giving these instructions, right? So there are these MD files, right? So coming back to what I was starting with, when we launched the platform, the picture or the image was the smallest unit, the simplest unit that we wanted to be able to give to the employee, right? The employee we wanted to give them kind of visual instructions on how they onboard or how they need to do anything they need to do within the company. That was kind of the birth of the product. But these MD files, which are just the instructions, are really important and central to any of these agentic workflows or any of these AI workflows. So it's super important that you have your processes documented. It's very important that you have the right guardrails and the right instructions, and that you're really paying attention to these. So the agents are just like employees, so they're going to need to know, instructions. And the way we're developing our product with the BPR AI is going to be all about this. It's going to be all about giving these instructional, basically grounding those agents in instructions. Just like you would provide instructions to a teammate, you can provide that to an agent.
Oh, I love that. So I'm glad that I assumed that's what was getting you into it. I wasn't sure, because some people, they say AI in the software and they're like, well, that just means like adding an MCP server or, it kind of layering it on. To me, it's about giving those AI agents context. So it sounds like that is a big part of what you're doing. And, if I go back to the phrase, a picture is worth 1,000 words, that's true for humans. That's not true for AI. Like AI, yes, it can do some cool stuff with images, but AI prefers text. And for those who don't know what a .md file is, it's called a markdown file. In my opinion, it's like a simple Word document. Like a Word document can do colors and insert images and all this stuff. Markdown is like a real simple version. Like all I can do is make text bold. I think I can make it italicized. I can do bullet points. AI loves bullet points, especially when it's like a bullet point nested under another bullet point. It loves that. What else can you do with Markdown? That's kind of the gist of it. Not much more.
That's kind of the gist of it, but really they're just really simple instructions, right?
Yeah.
So they're just it's a way to really keep things super simple for the agent. Just like the instructions, the visual instructions are a way of keeping it really simple for the teammate. So the premise is absolutely the same. But there are kind of two ways you want to think about it, I think, when it comes to software. So, software systems are also undergoing a huge change. All of us have to adapt to this new world. But in my opinion, there's kind of agentic in and there's agentic out. So in this case, what we're talking about is the instructions, how the agents are going to take that information out and then have the guardrails to operate. But you're also going to have agentic in. You're going to have agents who want to ask questions, who want to update information, and that also is something to think about. So I think these
Oh, I hadn't
both
even
of
thought
these
about that yet.
both of
Okay, keep
these
going.
both of these flows I think matter, because at the end of the day you need a source of truth, right? You need a like Acumatica ERP is a source of truth, or Salesforce is a source of truth for CRM. You also need something that's going to be kind of a source of truth for your SOPs. SOP
Love
stands for standard operating procedure.
Love that. I'm a little behind on the comments. One sec. Well, we got a pretty good brain trust on this episode. I wasn't even expecting to get anyone live. We got Corey talking about documentation is helpful, but people prefer videos of walkthrough processes. Does the BPR have videos with chapters? I'll let you respond to that.
Sure. Yes, we do. So you can have videos, you can have pictures. So yep, you can do that. So
I'm glad
each of our
Corey brought that up,
steps,
because
yeah,
I
each of our
agree with him
steps.
on that. I think a picture is worth 1,000 words. Even though I still kind of prefer pictures and text. I watch how my kids consume stuff. And if you just look at the internet in general, video has become, like YouTube, video has become the way to consume stuff. So maybe a video is worth 1,000,000 words from a human perspective. Yeah.
And visual in nature. So we also have 3D file support. So for any manufacturers who work with 3D files, it's a great way to train your team looking at a digital representation of the product or of whatever they're making, right? So we also do 3D support, because visuals absolutely, as Corey's saying, it's really important. So not just screenshots, videos, but also 3D files. We support that as well.
So maybe we can come up with a phrase for this. If a picture, so I think that if a picture is worth 1,000 words, maybe video is worth 1,000,000 words. I don't know. But what about on
So
the
then
AI side?
what's a 3D model worth then?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to stick with the picture is worth 1,000 words because I'm old school. But what would be the phrase for agent then? It's like, how do we flip that on its head from an agent perspective? I don't know. An SOP is worth something. I don't know. I'll have to think about what the phrase is from an agent's perspective. It's almost the opposite. 1,000 words is worth an image, or I don't know.
Or
I don't know what
instructions
it
are
is.
as important for agents as they are for teammates, right? Maybe.
Maybe more so because they
Maybe
have
more
no
so,
memory,
right?
right?
Right, exactly.
Then on the memory part, Joe's fact checking us. We've got quite a brain trust on this episode. Depends on the architecture your agent lives in. OpenClaw agents have built-in memory. I know that even things like ChatGPT are getting better with memory.
For sure.
But I don't know, Joe, your thoughts on this? Like, I don't know, built-in memory. To me, ChatGPT has gotten real creepy, where they've added in some built-in stuff where it starts tracking about you. Feels very similar to Facebook mindset of building product to me. But for me, I'd still, for token cost reasons, and even if you want to think about the planet and how human thinking is way more environmentally friendly than AI brains, if you get into that stuff, I still am not wanting the AI just to maintain its own memory. I want to maintain it for you. Joe, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. But I don't know, Tejas, do you have a response to that?
I think if we come back to the same issue, which is tribal knowledge, right? I think tribal knowledge is ultimately
Love that phrase.
what
Yeah.
we're trying to eliminate, so that we can all work together towards a common goal. So whatever I think tool you're going to use, that's the first goal. Make sure everybody's working on the same page. Get your documentation in one place. Make it easily editable, but also your agents. You want to make sure you're capturing the knowledge, and it's all evolving, right? I think no one can say they're an AI expert, so it's all evolving. But it's moving so fast. I mean, every day we're hearing new developments, and it's extremely exciting. But at the same time, what will tribal knowledge mean as these agents are going, right? So you can have an agent kind of over there doing its own thing. Who knows about it? How's it getting its job done? What are the guardrails? What are the checkpoints? What's the memory? So I think it's going to be important to retain some of that information. I think it's going to be important to not just give the agent instructions, but also be clear what the agent has done and how it's done it to break down those information silos, right? So because if agents are just like people working with the software independently, The great thing about people working independently is they get things done. The bad thing is that those silos start to form.
It's funny when you said tribal knowledge, you talked about it as something to eliminate. What I heard was something to embrace. To me, it was like, hey, we want the computer to know and work with the tribal knowledge. And maybe it's kind of the same thing you're saying, but for me, I almost want to lean into it. I want to be like, hey, let's bring the tribal knowledge into the digital world so we can work together with the AI, and that the tribal knowledge is something that we're all able to access easily. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think tribal knowledge typically, I think, is defined as someone who knows something and not everybody else knows about it, right? That's how it's defined. So I think the goal is that what you're saying, that all the knowledge from the team is coming into a place so that the agents know about it, but similarly that the knowledge from the agents is coming back and that we're working together.
And you talked about the silos. I guess we'll have a couple more comments, but I want to drill in on the silos a little bit more. So for me as a human, I don't like being just part of some gigantic corporate thing. I want to be part of a tribe. I think that's why the phrase tribal knowledge feels warm to me. Like I want tribal knowledge. And so I want like to be working in teams of 4 to 5. I think Amazon has a saying, was it called like a 2 pizza team, something like that, where their unit of team is the amount of people that would eat 2 pizzas or 1 pizza. They measure it in pizzas, meaning it's small is the point. And so I would kind of want to have an identity as a team that has tribal knowledge, but then how do we make sure that doesn't become a silo that's disconnected from everything else, right? I'm okay with like, if we picture as nodes in a neural brain kind of thing with all these tribal knowledge points, but if there's some way to kind of relate it together, is that sort of one way to look at process documentation?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. I think you get a lot of efficiency when you get small teams working together, right? But and you're going to get a lot of efficiency when you get different agents working together. But ultimately documenting it so everybody can work forward together, I think, is important. But you're right, small teams make great progress.
Quick time check. Do you have a hard stop at the top of the hour?
I don't.
Are you able to go for another 15, even 30 minutes or something after that?
For sure.
All right. Cause I'm super energized.
I know, but I'm surprised we're so energized with process documentation, but I am too.
I almost feel like we need a new word. Yeah. Like every time you say document, I'm like there's something that sort of twitches in me. I almost need like another word for, and it could just be me, right? I'm not saying this is the average person, but tribal knowledge resonates with me. I want to be part of a tribal team. I don't like the corporate infrastructure like starts to become cold and not as attractive. But yeah, what maybe we need what's another word for, instead of document, how do we feed the biological mechanism? It's something like that. I don't know. It's
Sounds
not
great.
The beast. That's not a good phrase, but how do we we're not feeding the machine, but how do we feed the ecosystem? Maybe, I don't know. It's like an ecosystem of knowledge. Ecosystem I like because it's sort of biological. I don't know what to think about that.
I like it.
Should we I'm shocked that we have multiple people live. This is awesome. Eric's got a comment here. Is the BPR guide an end user in the system through data entry that follows the SOP, like providing them next steps and information on the nature definition of the fields? Hope this is not out of scope. Yeah, that's a good point. Like if you have it documented and then someone's about to use, let's stick with Acumatica. All right. So if I pull up a screen in Acumatica, maybe it's entering a new vendor, and Acumatica might have 100 fields and our company might only care about 20 of them. So our SOP, standard operating procedure documentation, talks about the 20 fields we care about. I think Eric's asking if on the vendor screen, can the BPR then guide the user to say, do this one and this is why, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So the way the BPR is built, it's kind of step by step. So whatever matters to the end user, whatever they need to do, they can just follow along the guide. So they can have the Acumatica open, they can have the guide, and it can take them right through the application. So, and it can work with Acumatica, it can work with any application within your business. Also anything on the shop floor or anything in the warehouse. So really wherever your users are, it will be there to help them step by step. So that's definitely not out of scope. And it's a great question.
Then I'm gonna
And
flip it back to.
I love StreamYard. This is amazing. This little.
It's kind of cool, isn't it?
It's really cool.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to use. So then I'm gonna flip it back to the agent world, right?
Sure.
As soon as it's like, hey, guide someone to do the data entry, I start to think agent wise, right? Like now, actually, Joe, who's on here, thanks, Joe, for jumping on. Joe's taught me a ton about AI. Like we got a Discord. Actually, I'll put it up here. Give me a second. Let me queue it up. We got a Discord channel, augforums.com/Discord. Joe jumped on there, and it was mainly so I could stop texting Joe and just send him messages in the Discord app in a way that other people could see it too. But anyways, Joe's taught me a ton about this, and one thing Joe taught me about is basically using AI to drive a browser. So if we come back to Eric's question of like, hey, can you guide someone through the data entry? I almost wonder if in some cases, not all cases, but do you see in the new AI world that you're building towards where now that you have the process documented, an agent might be able to just do it for you?
For sure. And I think the world is already there. So you already can do that, even with the browsers that people have put out. You have like agentic browsers that can do this. So this absolutely is something that is already out there in the world. Getting the agents to actually do the steps and perform the actions. So for sure.
That's cool.
In terms of, I'd say for how we're envisioning it and how it's going, for us, the BPR, the library becomes for us the source of truth. So as the agents are actually doing that work, we are let's say updating the SOPs within the software itself. So I was saying agentic in, agentic out. So it's watching what's happening, and even if agents are doing these, even if everything becomes in that process becomes automated, it's super important to also document that SOP, right? To know how it's working or in what way it's working.
Oh, interesting.
And that's a little bit of because everything is going to be automated, right? The softwares themselves are going to have ways to automate processes. So for us, it's really important to think about how what we have to do is we have to create value for our end users. We have to continue to create value. And while there are going to be a lot of ways to automate what's going on, and this has been around already for a decade. So there was something called RPA, robotic process automation, that's been around for about a decade. So these and it's awesome. Things are being automated. Our focus as a company is to be there for as kind of a repository, a source of truth, to be there for the teams themselves to know kind of what's happening within the business, so they can always go to that source of truth and see what's happening from an SOP perspective, from a standard operating procedure perspective, whether it's an agent, whether it's a teammate. I'd say almost a dashboard of what's going on as it relates to the SOPs.
It finally clicked then for me what you said earlier about letting the agent update it, because that makes total sense.
Right.
Right now it's all about, well, I shouldn't say right now anymore. I guess in the past, it's been only about, hey, we want to know what all of our workers are doing and how it fits together. Now, when you're throwing AI agents into the mix, yeah, you need them to be able to describe what they're doing and in a sense, write their own operating procedures and then have it fit into what everyone else is doing. That's fascinating.
Right.
Yeah,
and also another thing is capturing the improvements it's making, right? So if we think of, if you were talking about as is processes and to be processes, you were talking about this like past state and future state. You could think of an SOP as almost like past present. You're documenting something as it's happening today or even maybe yesterday. And that means it's already outdated, right? By the time you document something, it's already, like, let's say, old. But so that's an SOP, let's say it's kind of past present. But if you think about an improvement or something that's being improved, that's like future present. So also tracking what the agents are doing and also tracking what teams are doing to improve processes, I think is going to be as important, if not more important, than tracking SOPs. So that's somewhere where we're also taking the platform. So not so much about automating everything, because the world is going to be automating everything, right? So, the our users are going to be covered there. We can't add any more incremental value to them. We can't add any value to them by just seeing what else can we automate. They're going to get a lot of that. But how can we help them collect those improvements from the agents, from the teams? Because then you're thinking about what needs to move forward. And I think there's always going to be things that humans can do, like human values can never be replaced by AI, right? And there's something very, very interesting about how people look at improvement or improving things. So we want to play in that space. We want to be in that space where we're, yes, tracking what the agents are doing, tracking and documenting all the SOPs for the teams, giving that source of truth, but also being the place where people can track improvements and capture them and capture their corrective actions, right? The improvements that were put in place and things that were corrected. And these are all things I learned in the manufacturing space, right? So things like corrective actions, continuous improvement, we learned by watching how our first clients operated. So SOP is always just a first step to improving something. So I'd say our next big iteration is going to be around improvement.
You know, every time SOP comes up, and it's there in Eric's comment, like, to me, it's similar to the word document. Like, it just doesn't resonate with me. And I think coming from the manufacturing space, it resonates more with you and more with manufacturing organization. But yeah, I just still think some old dusty thing that I'm going to work on that no one's ever going to care about. Right. And so I'm going to throw this phrase at you. This just came to mind. We'll see what you think about this. Like, especially in the world of AI, I don't know. I feel like what you've been working on with the BPR for a couple decades becomes 100 times more relevant in the age of AI. This has got to be pretty exciting. So I'm going to throw another phrase. Instead of SOP, I think memory might be a better word for it. And yeah, specifically maybe. Organizational
writing
memory.
It down.
Here's my phrase. I'm thinking, what's the BPR? It's organizational memory. I typed it wrong. Organizational memory nirvana. Humans and machines working together in harmony. What do you think about that?
I love it. I love it. Nirvana sounds great. Nobody's ever talked about the BPR and process documentation and nirvana in the same sentence. So I think this is way better.
But I think the phrase organizational memory might be a more current version of SOP.
For sure. Yeah, definitely.
Interesting. Fun times. Yeah, it's got to be fun.
And working, memory, but also, what's the word we're thinking about? Improvement, right? Memory is also, it's a capture of where we are today. It's a memory of the past. We also want to have organizational improvement. I think that, organizational improvement nirvana, that's also what we want, not just memory.
And as soon as I talk about memory, and I'm now in the brain, and yeah, the brain is always thinking about things. It's dreaming. Maybe it's
exactly
memories and future word. Dreams. To me, that's right. All happening in that. Yeah,
that's right. That's great.
So maybe, yeah, it starts to get complicated. What is it? Is it organizational neurology? I don't know, or neural something. Yeah, no, that's interesting.
Very cool. Yeah, and I'm very optimistic. I'm very optimistic. You said humans and machines working together. I think I'm optimistic to a fault, and I really see that. I see that future where the agents and the teams are going to be working really well together.
Well, yeah, and I'll balance your sounds like optimistic personality with a pessimistic personality. I prefer the term realist, not pessimist. I also, instead of the term
that's what pessimists always call.
Yeah, and then I prefer, instead of the term optimist, I prefer the term naive.
I'll take that. I'll definitely take that.
I love being paired with optimists because it balanced me very well, right?
Yes.
And I think that's why I work well in ERP, because ERP, you have to have glasses on where you're always trying to find things that could go wrong, because that works well in ERP.
For sure.
So I'll balance that for my fellow pessimists out there. And I think in accounting, there's a lot of us, even if you're like, I don't believe this human and machine nirvana stuff. Well, from my perspective, one reason why I'm really interested in AI is you need to know your enemy. right? So even if you foresee like a dystopian future, if you want to learn how to tear it down, you got to understand how the thing works, right? So either way, there's incentive to learn how to work with AI, both from the we're going to work together harmoniously, and also we're going to be able to destroy it when it gets out of control. You know, I don't know, something like that.
Well, I think, you know, the idea of fear, and you were talking about documentation and teammates kind of reacting with fear when you have to document something versus talking about how do you inspire them. I think it's a little bit the same with AI. Of course there are things that can go wrong. Of course you need to be careful. Of course you have to have guardrails. You have to be very sensitive with data. So, you know, all of those things matter, but the fact that you're talking about this, the fact that you're bringing people together to talk about this, it also means we're trying to be leaders in this field, and we're all trying to lean in. And I think by leaning in and taking action, it also reduces the fear we might have, right? It also reduces when you see the possibilities,
right?
The more you understand it,
always
right?
helps reduce fear. Yeah.
I mean, I think that people will speak from that fear lens if they don't lean into it. But as soon as you start leaning into it, the ideas just flow and the possibilities just flow. And it needs us. The agents need us. The models need us. They are using our information to get where they are, and they're going to need us to get to the next phase. They need our values, our creativity, our direction.
Totally with you. Yeah. And yeah, Eric throws Neuralink on there. Yeah, you can get all dystopian science fiction-y about it. But yeah, I think also to make it more practical, something you reminded me of, I've heard several people say this, and I believe it myself. From a work perspective, you want to just put your head in the sand related to AI. Instead of thinking about AI and competing with AI, I don't think it's apples to apples. I think humans and AI are like apples to oranges. The way I would think about it is, I don't think you're going to be replaced by AI. I really don't believe that. But I do think that you could be replaced by another person who's not afraid to work with AI. And so from just a career job standpoint, to earn a living, to help support your family, I think it's about, you need to lean into AI so you're not being replaced by another human who's not afraid to lean into AI. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
And I'd say that's the same with, I mean, exactly what you say is absolutely right. So many leaders have said exactly that, encouraging their teams to move with AI. The same goes with companies. We as a software company, if we don't lean into it, it's going to be a problem, right? We'll be replaced by something that has leaned into AI, and rightfully so. Yeah. I'm sure it trailed. You guys are doing a lot with AI. I know you guys are doing a lot with AI. You can speak to that. But in order to do it, you need to be able to step into unknown spaces, right? You need to be bold and kind of step into the darkness, because you're not sure what exactly, how the platform is going to change or how the software is going to change. And I think those companies that don't do it are going to have problems. The one thing I would say, though, is it's gray, what you talk about. You're not going to be replaced by it. It's going to be a blend. It's going to be workers who are enabled by AI. It's going to be software companies also, you know, the SaaS apocalypse that's here. You know, those companies, they will be okay if they lean in. I remember in 2012, we had just kind of launched, our desktop app was out. We were getting good traction. We had made a good product, and everybody was talking about, hey, stop making desktop applications, just make the mobile application. There's no future in desktop, and see, like, desktop is coming back now, right? And it's always been there. But what we did, and I think what most, well, I wouldn't say most, I think what a lot of companies did is let me just speak for us. What we did is we saw how to make the experience on desktop and mobile uniform. That was the art for us of the moment. It wasn't to stop on desktop. It was, how do we make it uniform so what they see on desktop is the same as what they see on mobile. So I think the same kind of creativity.
I got to say there, that's a crazy art, because I've never worked with an app that works the same on desktop and mobile. Well done.
Yeah. So, I mean, not to get too nerdy, but I'm going to get nerdy that, people would say, hey, you have to be a full screen desktop app. And no, you have to be a mobile screen app. We built this really cool SOP app that just pops out of your system tray. It sits right that it looks like that, and it looks exactly the same on mobile. So users have to just learn one interface, and they can look at all their SOPs in the same way on both devices, right? And now it's the same. This is another technology movement that's happening. We just have to extend ourselves into the future, put one step into the future, and be very creative about how the two things come together. The human work and the human influence that we need to put into our work, and the AI influence. We just have to be really creative, keep those tenets around simplicity. I still think, visual is going to be really important. I know, like in agents, MD files and all that stuff, and written is more important, but I think visual will still be important.
I think for humans, it always is. Yeah. It
I
always
think,
is,
and
yeah.
I also think for the future and AI, it's going to be really important. I think it's also going to be important in how they communicate with, because at the end of the day, they have to communicate with humans. And if they're communicating with humans, the picture is still going to be important. So I think it will have more relevance with time. That's at least the bet that we're making. But the art is going to be, how do you make that leap? How do you keep both? How do you blend the human worker or the human workflows with the agentic workflows? I think that's the key. Creatively.
Yeah. I'm going to pull it back from science fiction world back into technology world here. So Joe had a couple comments on memory. So agents maintaining their own memory makes them way more powerful. And Joe's building a bunch of agent stuff in his own business. Like, he's not a software company, in his own company that uses Acumatica. So they can actually learn that way and get better at the tasks you give them. Then he also says, I've given our agents instructions to identify and write high value tribal knowledge they come across while working with their users.
There you go.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
Awesome. And that's exactly, what that's amazing, Joe, what you're doing. Very, 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 very futuristic, and absolutely, I think it's super important to write that tribal knowledge when they come, basically to everybody's benefit. So I think that's really powerful, and it's a great model for all of us.
And one thing that starts to get me thinking of, if we go back to the SOP version of things, where you're producing a document for a process. To me, one of the scariest things for a person is the blinking cursor. If you open something up and it's just a blinking cursor and you're supposed to know what to type, for a lot of people, that's a scary thing. And what Joe's comment makes me think about is, when you know that you want to document that tribal knowledge, what are your thoughts on things you might be working on? Maybe you already have it in the BPR product, things where AI can help pull that information out of people by just starting to ask questions, and maybe even ask follow-up questions by how you respond to it. Almost like AI interviewing the person to extract the tribal knowledge. You working on anything in that area? Have any thoughts?
For sure. So we have different AI writers now. So the blinking cursor you're talking about, right? So sometimes subject matter experts don't actually, or let's say someone is tasked to be the subject matter expert to document something, and because they're the closest thing to the subject matter expert within that company, but they just see that blinking cursor and they're not sure what to do. So within our app, you can ask kind of a grounding question like, hey, how could I do this, or how could I make this an SOP? And it'll lead you through, that process of building that SOP. We also are building now the ability for users to just send information, whatever information they come across, via email, via text, to the library. So that's what I meant about agentic in and agentic out, right? So agentic in is going to be able to take that information that you give it and put it into an SOP format, in whatever format you give it to it. So it's going to understand through its own MD file. It's going to understand what is coming to it and write out that instruction. Because at the end of the day, why did we start, right? So the BPR stood for the business process recorder. It was about taking friction away from end users to create documentation. It started just on desktop, but then it extended to mobile, where shop floor workers could take pictures and really easy. They didn't have to email pictures to themselves. They could, take pictures of the machine and add arrows and do all that on the phone itself, put QR codes. So the friction-free creation was always there when we started. But now in this new world, what it means is, hey, I have this new instruction that I've gotten from a teammate. I just need to send it to the SOP library and let the library or the agent of the library handle it and process it. So again, that same idea of removing the friction and keeping it simple, but just a new way to create. So we're going to do that in a lot of different ways. Take hand holding the user or holding the user's hand through creating the knowledge and documenting the knowledge.
Love that. Removing friction. Love that. And that really pairs well with the simplicity way of thinking that you're really good at.
Well, I think it's important. It's important. Try to be good at it. I think it's really hard. It's so easy to just stuff a feature in, or it's so easy to just do what someone is asking you and just do it, right? But the art is thinking, okay, they're asking for something. How do we give it to them in an even better way than they're asking? I think that's the art.
I'll read the Richard Branson quote again. Complexity is your enemy. Any fool can make something complicated. It is hard to keep things simple. It's very true.
And it's a balance. I think right now everybody's manic and going crazy and saying, oh my God, the world is going so fast. We got to go, 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 go. But there's also in this process, there's also a real importance to take a step back, and just look at everything for a moment before you then lean in. We have to move fast, but sometimes maybe through mistakes or through just needing time, maybe sometimes you have to also slow down to then go fast again. So I think that also helps sometimes help you see things more clearly and simply by sometimes taking a step back, because we're all just so focused on leaning in right now and just going.
Love that. I think that's also why it's important to keep in mind. This is my opinion. I'm not an economist, so this is just my opinion. But I think economically, society-wise, as humans, we can't think of ourselves as competing directly against machines. I don't think that way, at least. There's broader, others might disagree with that. But I really think of it as apples to apples. It's us competing with other people. And in that vein, the machines are going to do what the machines are going to do. We're going to learn how to work the machines. But in that vein, you use the word manic, and it's so easy to get into that mode with all that's going on with AI right now. And when you use the word manic, I think it applies very well to the AI workers. My phrase for the AI worker is, it's like someone who's hopped up on meth and working 24/7. Like if you interact with AI, it's like this super eager, twitchy thing that's like, I can do that. I can help, and we don't want to get into the world of trying to work like an AI agent. Like we humans, we think differently, and taking a step back, going for a walk, exercising, all those human things that
For sure.
allow our brain to work in a very different way than AI does. Let's stay in that lane and just think of ourselves as competing with other people. I think if we try to compete with the agents and we try to work as hard as they do and everything, things get really ugly really fast. So what are your thoughts?
Right. So I'd say the judgment is the most important thing, right? The judgment that we have. And sometimes that's the most important thing. So the only way to get that judgment is by stepping back. And AI, in my opinion, doesn't have that judgment. It can't replace certain human values. So these things are really important in us realizing really it's about empowering us and our abilities. I think competition, this is maybe another a conversation for later, but I think competition itself creates anxiety, right? The idea of competition sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we think about it like we're competing with the AI, that's going to put us on our back foot and that's not always a
Mhm.
good thing, right? We're
It
just
puts us
competing
in
with
fight or
ourselves.
flight mode, right? Our brain goes
Right.
into fight or
I
flight mode.
mean,
Yeah.
we're just competing with ourselves, and that's the same way I look at with optimum output, right? I mean, our platform does a lot of different things. They're different parts of our app. There's no exact replica of the BPR, but they're different parts of our app where clearly, there's competition. But we really don't focus on that, because if we focus on that, it puts us on our back foot. If we're just focusing on what drives us, which is making that end user feel inspired, or feel motivated, or feel driven to improve something, we're gonna be able to build something that's a brand new category. And that's what we're doing. We're building something that's also a brand new category. We've always tried to do that over the years. And you don't create new categories by, focusing on competition. You create new categories by really being inspired by the people you're serving, just through service. And I think it's the same thing with AI. If we're going to focus on how we're competing with it, we're not going to be able to make the best use of it. If we focus on how can we use it to inspire our team or our users or myself, and I'm just competing with myself, oh my gosh, the sky is the limit.
Love that. Makes me think of, I ran track and cross country in high school. That was 70 pounds ago. But that
You look
track and
great,
cross
Tim.
country, what's that?
I said you look great.
But track and cross country are very much about competing with yourself. That's
Yeah,
one thing I really enjoyed about it. It's like, yeah, I know there's always going to be better runners than me. A lot of it's just genetic, to be honest. But there's
right.
something really fulfilling about improving your time. You run the same course and you're able to run it faster than you did 3 months ago, just because you've put in the time to make it better. And that really resonates to me. So then what you're talking about with using AI to help you be better. I've even seen ChatGPT do some commercials on this now. I don't know if you've seen this commercial. It's like this kid who wants to learn how to hit the game-winning shot. And so he asked ChatGPT to help him with that. It comes up with the plan, for things to work on, and he puts in the work. And then at the very end of it, he's in a game and he hits the game-winning shot.
Right.
That I really like, where, like you said, you're just competing against yourself to keep growing, keep learning, keep you better. And you're using the latest technology to help you do that. No different than using the latest technology in other times in human history to, just stay relevant and make yourself better. I like that.
Right. And, things like, I've had the privilege of, I have an Indian background. So, I got to spend a lot of time in India. My wife is from Amsterdam. So we spend a lot of time, living in Amsterdam, and I'm born in the States. And just, I've been lucky enough to live in so many different places. And through that experience, you also see how competition exists in different worlds. Like it's different in Argentina, the way it is in
Yeah.
Europe, the way it is in India, the way it is in here in the States. And I think that's another advantage we have as humans, that we get these experiences that then change our judgment, that then, allow us to reframe things. Like the way, they would look at competition very differently in the Netherlands, in my experience in Amsterdam. It's
How?
kind of,
Tell me more
yeah,
about that.
well,
Yeah.
I would say here it's almost celebrated that we're competing with everybody else, and that competition, kind of creates excellence, and it does. But here I'd say it's more like competing with others, right? And in Amsterdam, it's very much about competing with yourself, right? It's very much about, it doesn't come from
Interesting.
society, and society is, very much, let's say, balanced and stuff like that. But then you see the Dutch soccer team is like one of the top in the world. And why are they? Like my wife and I have debates about that all the time, because it's really fostered there to really compete with yourself, right? But then there are also advantages to how it is here in America, because we have this open, competitive system where we're all trying to be, great against each other. So you have these amazing companies I mean, they each have their benefits. They each have their really benefits. But coming back to it, we have that experience of traveling, of experience, of judgment. So if we realize that AI is not going to be able to do all those things, it can come along more as a companion to make things better.
Love that. Coming back to the motivation to get someone to participate, let's make the world a better place together. And AI is just another component to help us achieve that. I like that.
For sure, for sure.
You mentioned the word library multiple times. Can you tell me about in the BPR specifically? So you've talked about SOP. I think you mentioned the word library, which I'm assuming right now is a collection of SOPs. Can you give me the language you use in the BPR and how you structure things? What are those things and how are they related to each other?
Yeah, so I mean, that's essentially what it is. We have these different libraries. So these different libraries could be for different business units. The libraries are all modular. So we're going to also use those to train agents. So each library could be there to train an agent. So libraries are just essentially the collection of the SOPs for the business unit, the teammate, or the agent.
And then are there folders where you could organize SOPs and folders in a library?
So okay. They're folders, and then you can club. So very nerdy. I'm going to get super nerdy.
Yeah, do it.
That's why we're here, right?
Yeah, so, let's geek out.
You know, part of the simplicity, and I think this is just a general statement, is that for in all software, you have kind of endless trees of paths. It goes like folder within folder within folder within folder. It goes endlessly. So one of the things I encourage in design or software design is that each level of organization or each level of nesting should look a little bit different, right? So you have visual cues. So when you're looking at something, you know you're in your last level of organization, or if you're looking at something. So that's why each of our levels of organization. So the first one is a library, which is just the collection of SOPs, and then you have your department, which is like your folder that looks different, and then you have something called a club. And the club allows you to group different SOPs in different orders and stuff like that. So that way, wherever your end user is in the app, they know exactly what they're seeing, and they know the path, right? How many of us who are older, know the pain of having endless file paths, right? Mm-hmm. Like, file path and a file path and a file path. So
I'm curious on that. So you said library.
Yeah.
Then you said department.
Yep, department, which is
then
just
you said club.
Club, yep.
And so, do you put a finite limit on the tree?
We put so there's really no limit. There's no limit. No, there's no limit to.
So under the club, I could put more. What would you call it under the club? A folder under.
Those are your SOPs. Those are your. Sorry, forgive me. There's a limit to the tree, and that's intentional.
That's what I was wondering. What I was wondering.
Okay. Me. I thought you meant there was a.
So library, department, club, and I wouldn't do another folder under club.
No, you wouldn't. So we also challenge the end user.
Yeah.
The end user to have to also organize it. So because at the end of the day, whoever the subject matter expert that's putting it together, they also should be thinking about whoever's going to be consuming that content. It's not just about producing the content, otherwise anybody could sit here and create a 3-hour video and put it within have 20 versions and put it within a huge folder tree. So I think what's important is, helping the end user. You mentioned, how do you help the end user make it easy, or how do you help them? We do that also through design. And Apple does an amazing job of that. Apple does a great job of that, kind of bringing that in.
I love that. Less is more. Oh, I'm losing you. Are you still there?
Yep, I'm here.
I think your video is just popping in and out. Less is more. And what I love about that, so you're basically talking about 4 levels. Like you could go 4 levels deep and no more. The reason why I love that is, one thing I've been doing is I'll have conversations. I'm going to call them conversations. I feel like I should have I'm going to use the word interaction. I really like putting a line on AI. This is not a human being. I need a different word, interactions. So I've been having interactions with the AI to learn more about AI. So I don't trust AI for, like super philosophical and meaning of life type topics, but I do trust it to teach me about itself, right? So I've had interactions with ChatGPT where I'm like, how do you want me to structure information for you? What's best for you? And one thing I took out of that was not going more than 4 levels deep, actually.
Right,
And it was like
right.
3 to 4 being the max. And for me, it was simple, like just thinking in terms of bullet points. It was like, I'm going to give you a top level of bullet points. I'll indent underneath that. I'll indent underneath that. But if I start to do a 4th indent, I should really be thinking that maybe I need an entirely new document. And that's exactly what you set up here. So that's fascinating to me. And it makes perfect sense to me in the sense of, in general, rules of 3, high, medium, low. You go, order something off a menu, you're going to have large, medium, small. That just makes perfect sense. And also, like, outline wise, when I was in 7th grade, go back to 7th grade, I had a history teacher who did nothing that year but basically help us learn how to outline. I appreciate him so much more this past 6 months in the world of AI than ever before, because you would do that. Like, you'd start with a Roman numeral, big letter A. And I remember that experience. Like, once you get to like 3 or 4 levels, you're sort of getting lost, and you just force yourself not to keep going down. So that I love that way you did the design. And to your point, and then I'll let you respond, and to your point of, you have names for each thing. So when you say a name, you not only know how many levels deep it is, you know where it is in relation to the other things. I love that. Yeah. What's your response to that?
So I was going to say that you were asking the AI what's the organization, right? But I think it also goes the same way back. We get so many documents or so much information back from the AI that's not well organized. It's our responsibility, and it's our judgment as users to realize that's where our value add is, right? I've seen so many people just in this whole experience in the last few years who, and everybody does it. Like, it's like, okay, I just got to get something done. Let me just ask AI, and I get a document, and I give it to somebody, or I send it somewhere. And that judgment is so important to also get back from AI and keep it super simple and have that lens. So both ways, I think.
Love that. Does it also apply? So the reason why I asked the library question, and I wanted to get that context, which I still love. I'm going to go take a walk to digest that part. But back on the part where you were talking about, you could just throw a document over to the BPR. What I was hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what I was hearing is, I just throw a document over to the BPR, but I'm not just dropping it directly into a department or I forgot what was under apartment. What was it?
Club.
It sounds like it's passing through an AI layer that's going to ingest the document and do something in that agent's markdown file or memory or whatever you want to call it, and skills, instruction. Are you instructing it along those lines? Like, when you generate the markdown out of this, I want you to do it in bullet points and only do, like, talk to me about those instructions that you feed it for parsing a real world document and turning it into something that lands in the library.
And it's amazing how well you know this, Tim. But yes, that's what that BPR AI layer that I was alluding to before, that's what that is. That it takes and that's what we're working on and making it better in the agentic in and the agentic out. That you're gonna be able to add a markdown file to the library itself, and the markdown file will then provide instructions or grounding to that library, and then the information that's being passed, whether it's an email, an SOP, whatever format that is coming in a document. Sometimes we might be writing an email back and forth saying, hey, how are we going to improve something? And we go kind of back and forth, and you just forward that email over. And then based on that MD file, it'll take appropriate action and bring it into the library. So exactly what you're saying.
Fascinating. So I said this earlier, but I'm going to say it again. I feel like all this AI stuff, for me, it's just been the last 5 months. I've only gotten into it since January of this year. All right. So let's be generous and say that it's actually been going on the last few years. I feel like this stuff 10x's your company valuation. Like, are you excited by this? Like, if you look at your 2 decades or so, is this really that big of a change, or is it just another technology step? Like, in terms of the value that the BPR brings to the table? Because when you talk about, hey, we've got agents that we're building to help ingest documents and stuff, that stuff's hugely valuable and is just part of the brain of the software. Like, Are you sensing that, or is it just another technology step for you?
I think we're very excited. We're always excited, right? At trying to
That's
make it
kind of the
better.
impression I get. Yeah. You're always going 100 miles an hour. So yeah.
We're always, I mean, I think because we're just, I feel so grateful to be able to be doing this, for 25 years. So to be able to be here in this moment, I feel very grateful to be able to have the opportunity to try to make what we have better for our customers and our partners who have given us so much, and our team who's given us so much. It's really, that's always been the approach, though. Also, when mobile came, we were so excited that we could even do those things to then make it possible. So these trends will keep happening, and they're probably going to go faster. So it's definitely something I'm very grateful about, very excited about, and I think it can have huge impact for our business, but I think for more importantly for our customers' businesses and for all businesses out there, I think, so definitely. And I think it's to be able to capture that potential, coming back to the original point, I think it's for us, what works is to be really grateful that we have the opportunity and also try to be brave. Everybody's going to be afraid. Everybody has some sort of anxiety and everybody has some sort of uncertainty. And anybody that says that they don't is, in my opinion, lying, because I think, but I think the key is just to lean in. The key is to lean into it and find that great team, because it's all something that we do with the team, and move it forward.
Love that. I love that response, because it really fits with everything else you've said and just what I know about you as a person. You're not what's the word? Not influenced. Your direction is not determined by the world around you. Like, you don't strike me as someone who reads the news and then lets that impact your mood for the day. You're competing against yourself, as you said. And so, yeah, this AI stuff is cool, but I love your response. It's like, I've been doing really cool stuff for the last 20 years. This isn't any different. I still get up and my day is still determined by me. I'm not being driven by all the noise that's going on. I know that's kind of what I hear. I love that. So like, you're leaning into it, you're embracing it, but that's no different than what you've been doing for the last 20 years. So I love that.
Yeah. And I would just add one thing, that also for the last 20 years, there's like a, healthy level of anxiety throughout the whole thing. So, but
I'm sure,
for everybody, but I think, again, the way to attack that and the way to handle that is just by seeing the blessings, to be able to actually be living and building in this time for all of us, and I think that just changes the mindset. Everybody hears the news. I don't actively read the news, but everybody hears the news and sees what's going on, and it's easy to get in again on our back foot, or to feel that sense of fear. And I do too, but I think the way to try to overcome that is leaning in and trying to just serve others. And if we're serving others, it's going to help us try to deliver the best things we can.
Love that.
And I think that's going to stay. It's going to stay that way. It's going to stay that way.
Can I ask you if exercise is a component that helps you with the anxiety and the fear?
For sure. 100%. 100%. I think it's something I've done actually all 25 years that I've done the business, and I find, I mean, you mentioned you've really leaned into it as well, and it's amazing you do. But it also is the source of some of my ideas. It's the source of connection. It's the source of building culture and team. So definitely, it's something that very much grounds me. Just like the MD file grounds the AI, exercise definitely grounds me.
Love that.
For
Love
sure.
That.
For sure.
Love that. We had a couple other comments. Do you have another 15, 20, or should we wrap it up? What's your gut?
15 is good.
15? Let's just hit the, actually, we have one other main one. So Kent put a big one here. And Kent, that reminds me that Kent's on my list to get on the podcast. But I'll just read it out for the non-video version of this podcast. Kent says, listening in and enjoying the discussion, one thing that stands out is how quickly the conversation is shifting from AI capabilities to operational outcomes. Conversation around process guidance, memory, context, and adoption suggests the market is starting to focus less on the technology itself and more on how AI helps people get work done. Looking forward to the rest of the discussion. I love that comment. I feel like with any piece of technology, the sign that it's actually being useful is when you don't notice it's there. And I think with any new technology, there's so much noise that comes out, AI. I don't really care about AI. I care about make the pain less in whatever the specific situation is. And if you're using AI to do that, great. I don't care. Love that. What are your thoughts on this?
My mentor, and I've been so lucky to have so many different amazing mentors. But let's say my main mentor, he's always emphasized to me that it's never about the tool, it's never about the technology, right? So I think that is something I always keep in mind. So it's never about the technology, it's never about the BPR. The BPR could be called whatever, our company could be called whatever. It's never about that technology. It's always about the outcome. And the outcome could be, once you deliver the technology, how do you follow up? Those human things are even more important. And sometimes I've gotten too wrapped up in the technology where I've lost sight of the things that actually matter, right? And that excitement can get too much. And I think what's really important, what Ken is saying is absolutely right, that it should always be about the operational outcome. It should always be about helping the team. And sometimes it requires those manual interventions to make it happen. Those things are not going to go away. Follow up, guidance, coaching, those things will not go away.
Do you have a phrase that summarizes that? For me, one I reach a lot for solve the pain. That's a phrase I use. But when you said outcomes, is it something that involves outcomes? Yeah. Do you have a simple phrase for that?
I mean, in my case, it's just service above self. I think that's a famous Rotary saying. I think Gandhi said something similar, like, the best way to find yourself is in the service of others. So if you're just totally focused on the outcome and you're not focused, if I'm focused on the technology, I'm focusing on me. But if I'm focusing on the outcome, I'm focusing on who matters. And then I think more ideas come, right? If I actually focus on the technology, less relevant ideas come. If I totally focused on service, then the better ideas come.
Love that. That reminds me of a phrase that Adam Lesky at Trailed, he's one of the founders. He's used this to me several times. I'll come back to the Trail part. I've done a lot with Acumatica user groups the past year and a half. And he's just like, Tim, I just want you to serve the community.
Right.
And, we just trust that leads come out of that. It's scary to think that way, but I really like that. I think it's the way to go. Yeah,
for sure. And we all sometimes get lost and focus on the widget. And, that's also
all of us PT people do, right? We just need I think exercise is a great way to pull you out of that, or taking a shower, or whatever. I'll hit one more. I don't want to pull into this too much, so this is kind of in the sci-fi vein. But Eric, I actually just saw Eric 3 days ago at a Chicago Cubs game. I was in Chicago this week. And he was talking about this. That leads into the use case for why I think data centers will be the new commodity and have to be regulated like the energy industry in terms of reliability, i.e. regulation to prevent data outages versus electrical outages. I think he made this comment back, when we were talking about the futuristic sci-fi stuff. All sorts of crazy stuff going on. I know Eric's in the energy sector, and maybe he made this comment around the time where I talked about just efficiency of the human brain versus the AI brain. I don't think anyone really knows how much electricity AI consumes when it answers stuff, but I think it's a lot. And there's one way where us humans are still better than the AI. We cost a lot less to do cognitive tasks. But anyways, do you have any thoughts on that? I don't want to get too sci-fi again, but do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, I think there's definitely changes that are going to be coming, and we talk a lot about token usage right now, and that's a big big topic. So resources, of course, are always something that's the oxygen of a business. And in order to get that token, you have to pay. So energy also matters, money matters. All of these things are so important to how we're going to operate. But like Eric says, and like you say, it's all changing. It's all changing. We just have to kind of all of us lean into that change and
lean in. I was hoping you were going to say it. There it is. Lean into it. I love it. I love it.
But thanks to everybody for joining. So cool.
Yeah, thanks for having such a long chat. This was the kind of chat I was hoping we would have, and I really appreciate you for not like just slinging product, this whole time. But
for sure.
You really just leaned in to just having a natural chat about things. I would though, tell me in the last couple of minutes here, I'd love to have you back on to talk about some more BPR specific stuff. You mentioned you have something coming in 30 days. Give me the highlights of what are you working on?
So it's essentially that what I was mentioning. It's all about the agentic workflows, and it's all about that AI layer on top of the BPR, keeping it simple, keeping it visual. So that's what I can kind of show more of in our next session.
Do you have like a slide deck or demo? What are you thinking would be the best way to
do that? I think whatever your audience would like, we could do either. So maybe poll the audience, ask them what they'd like. If they'd like a demo, we can do that. If they'd like just an overview and a conversation again, we can do that.
Actually, I think I'm going to answer it for the audience. Whenever, I'm not going to poll the audience. I would prefer more of a deck. Like I was like, keeping things more conversational on this podcast. And then if someone wants a demo, they just reach out to you for a demo.
We can do that.
How does that sound?
That sounds great. And
Tim, with that in mind, I should have had you mind if I put your email up on the screen here?
No, please do.
I should have had that queued up. Give me a second. Sorry, what were you saying before I cut you off?
I was saying thank you for putting this together.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate learning from you in this world that we're this AI stuff. I just think it's hugely relevant to where all this agent stuff is going. So I really appreciate it.
And I learned so much.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say I learned so much from you that I saw you at the Acumatica user group. You travel all over, kind of boundless energy, and you're really driven to get good information out and lean into topics. So very grateful for you putting this together.
Yeah, that's right. We just saw each other at the Technology Leader Collective in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Super brief. Yep. I whispered in your ear during a presentation. Like I walked across the room and just wanted to say hi and said something about the presentation that was going on, how it was super relevant to the stuff you do. And then I never caught you the rest of the time, but I did see you briefly. And you're in the Philadelphia area, so it's easy for you to get to Lancaster. But yeah, people want to reach out to you to learn more. So yeah, tell me, your email's on the screen there. It's tejas@optimumoutput.com. What's the difference between Optimum Output and the BPR?
Optimum Output is our company. The BPR is our product.
Perfect. So there's your email address for anyone who wants to reach out about that. But yeah, I'd love to have back on you're a good product thinker. And I'm not big into slinging product on this podcast, but specifically the way you think about product and build product. I would love to have you back on and see your slide deck related to the AI stuff. When would be a good time? I think you said you're releasing something in the next 30 days. So maybe 60 days out or something like that.
That sounds great.
Okay. Awesome, man. Well, we'll follow up by email. Thanks again. Any final thoughts you want to wrap it up with?
It's very cool what you're doing for your audience. I've seen a couple of your other podcasts, and I think you're bringing great information. And just a big thanks.
Awesome. Love the chat, and we'll have you back on in a little bit.
Awesome. See you, Tim.
All right.